Your core values are the glue that holds your business together. Doris P. Johnson. On today's episode, we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of running your business and give you a tool to help you reach a new level of success. You don't want to miss this one. Welcome to the Stitched for Success podcast, where we are teaching business and life lessons that will help you launch, grow, or scale your creative business. I am Monica Allen, and I'm a wife, mom, daughter, entrepreneur, author, friend, lifelong learner, and host of this podcast. For over 8 years, I was stuck in corporate and dreamt of escaping. Creating a side hustle with just $700 and having taken the leap over 15 years ago, we have since grown multiple six-figure and seven-figure brands. Being an entrepreneur for over 18 years has afforded me many successes and a few failures. I want to share those with you so you can grow and be successful in your business. The lady I'm speaking with today is much like myself. We both love chatting about all things business, but she especially loves discussing core values and believes that clear, concise, and detailed core values can create an incredibly strong foundation for your business. Starting out as a blogger and then becoming a virtual assistant and social media agency owner, Jennifer Jane has taken on business coaching, putting it all together and forming Jennifer Jane & Co. I want to share with you my chat with Jennifer. Welcome to the Stitch for Success podcast, Jennifer. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Monica. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, Jennifer, I am so happy to have you on the show because one of the things that you like to talk about is core values.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that once we establish core values in our business, it took a completely different trajectory in a very positive way. So I want to talk to you about core values first, and then we're going to dive a little bit into your business. How important is it to have core values in your business?
It's a step that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. They just kind of gloss over it. They think branding and establishing their business foundation is colors and a logo and a website. But what really matters is the heart of who you are and what you want your impact to be. And if core values isn't that, then you've missed a key piece of what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly. Let's back up a little bit. And I should have asked you this first. How do you define core values? What are core values?
To me, core values are really the standard, the line in the sand, the North Pole, the compass, if you will, of how you want to navigate your life and your business and combining the two. It's this element of really diving deep, not only into the legacy you want to build and the impact you want to have on the world, but how you want to do it. And when you've identified those things, then you can really kind of use that as the foundation for your entire business. A lot of people think of core values as like the 5 words that we're going to use that sound really good, right? And it doesn't go any deeper than that. But to me, core values are the thing that always pull me back to center. 100% of the time, it's how I want to live my life and how I want to navigate every facet of my business. So it's always the thing I go back to make sure that I'm on track.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Do you feel like solopreneurs or sole proprietors need to have established core values as well?
Yes. Yes.
I knew that would
1,000%.
be your answer, but I really wanted to ask you that so you would answer that because I do feel like a lot of times people think it's something for big businesses.
Yeah, they do. Or they think it's something that they'll get to down the line, right? Like, I'll work on my core values. Once I got my business up and running, I'll take time to work on my business. As a service provider, it's so easy, regardless of what kind of service or industry you're in, it's so easy to work in our business and get really caught up on doing the day-to-day things that we forget that we are the business owners and we have to set the course. We have to direct the ship, if you will. And core values are the rudder by which you can navigate all of those things. And if we don't take the time to really identify them, even if you're only going like one level deep, which is not what I would recommend, but even if you're just taking time to pick out those 4 or 5 or 6 words that you really want to live your life by, then like that's something, but it should be way deeper than that. But at least you have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish.
Gotcha. what are some steps to establishing core values? Like, what direction can you give someone who's listening to this now? They're like, yes, okay, I need to establish core values. Where do they start?
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend is there's 3 questions you want to ask yourself. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And what do you want your legacy to be? So that's like the very first step I always walk people through. And I actually have a freebie we can make available that just kind of guides people through these questions to really get clear on what those like couple of words are to start with. Because once you know what, like, you know, if it's community or communication or transparency, there's like 200 possible words that could be your core values. And it can even be a phrase. It doesn't have to be a singular word, but you want to ask yourself those questions because core values are more than just some words you pull out of a hat that sound really good on a mission statement or a banner, or, you know, if you see yourself in a skyrise someday, you know, your core values, they need to be more than that. And it takes a lot of reflection. It takes a lot of like introspection and really going into the thought process. And I always recommend journaling through the process of doing your core values, because you're going to learn a lot about not just what you want, but how you want to do it.
Gotcha. And so do you recommend asking those same questions if you have a team of people that you're establishing core values for? If
you're a solopreneur or you're leading a team, you're still leading, right? So you have to set the direction from the top down. And if you are a sole proprietor or you have a partner, then it's a partner conversation you need to have, but it needs to come from the top down. You know, people will always want to know why. When you're leading, people want to know why. Why would I do things this way? Why would I do this? Why is this important? And when you can clearly communicate the why and the heart behind what you're building, people will jump on board so much faster.
I like that a lot. How do you help your clients do this? Because this is part of your business, right?
Yeah, it's a really big piece of the how of what I do. And so it's a process of taking those words and then going what I call molecular on your core values. And it's taking what that word looks like, what it feels like, where it shows up and where it creates an impact, and going layer by layer by layer. So for example, if one of your core values is community, well, then I'm going to ask you, what does your community look like? What does it feel like? Where does it show up? Where does it create an impact? How does it impact your life? And we're going to write all those things out. And then if community, the first level is community. The second level would be, you know, a space where people can belong. So then I'm going to ask you, well, what does a space where people belong look like? What does that feel like? Where does that show up? Where does that create community? Where does that create an impact? And we're going to do that over and over and over and over again until either you're repeating yourself or you've run out of words.
Gotcha. And do you have a recommendation for how many words are part of your core values?
Typically, I find people land on 5. I would say anywhere from 3 to 7 max. And it really kind of depends on if you're building a business as a solopreneur first, or if you're working with a team. If there's a team, you may need to go a little bit wider to make sure that everyone feels like it's cohesive. But typically, like 99.9% of the time, people land on 5.
Gotcha. And do you find that companies that have teams, do you find that they work together to come up with core values, or is it the leader? It needs
to be the leadership. You know, if you're, a senior management, senior leader in a company, that should be the conversation the senior team is having, because that's where the leadership starts. That's where it all trickles down from. If you're in a situation where it's like a CEO type scenario and there's like multiple levels of leadership, it's the top tiers that need to be having this conversation. But even that still needs to be led. That conversation needs to be led and directed by the person who's ultimately responsible to steer the ship, which in this scenario would be the CEO.
Right. So let's say now we have our core values established as a leader. You're communicating this. How do you recommend communicating this to your team, and how often and in what way? I know that's a few different questions in there.
Yeah. I mean, it needs to become the conversation it's the heart of every conversation, really. A lot of times when I'm using this tool of core values, it's the heart of every story we're telling in social media. It's the heart of the conversation we're going to be having in our community. It really becomes really the center of the greater scheme of things, because when you have this identified and you know what really, really matters, you can't escape it. You don't want to escape it. There's no reason to escape it, because you've got that center piece that you can always navigate back to. In a larger corporation type scenario, it's something that you want to be constantly reminding people of. It needs to be included on all of your communication. Our core values are, and reminding people constantly. It needs to be front and center, as clear and crystallized and thought about as a mission statement is. It needs to be there and it needs to be communicated clearly. Now, how often you're going deep into what that means and where it creates an impact depends on the situation and the organization. But people need to be constantly reminded that this is how we navigate and this is where we start and we build from there.
Gotcha. So we used to, once we established our core values, and we actually just recently kind of revisited ours last year, but they haven't changed a lot. It's just we added a couple little tweaks. We used to all recite the core values at the end of our staff meeting, at each staff meeting. And again, going back to what I said earlier, establishing core values and putting them in front of our team on a regular basis just made such a huge difference. What type of difference have you seen with your clients once they've established core values?
One of the favorite pieces of feedback I got was from a client that onboarded a couple of months ago. And she said to me, she's like, when we did this core values work, it took us 3 days, like probably some total of 12 plus hours over the course of 3 days. We went deep and we went really intentional, and it was emotionally draining. She was like, by the end of the third day, I was done. I didn't want to anymore. She's like, but I understood the purpose of it. And the feedback I literally got from her like 3 days later was like, how I was dragging my feet on the core values and I was kind of like just tired at the end of that. I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, the very next day I had the opportunity to use that information that we dove so deep on to make a decision related to the business, because I knew what I wanted and I knew where the impact was going to be, like from this decision. And it was a very clear no for me. I didn't want to do that because I understood what my bigger mission was. And I was like, yes, because that taking the time to really figure out this core piece of what you want to build gives you crystal clear no's and hell yeses with such ease. You don't want to mess around with those little bits of gray things where you're like, well, it could be, it might not be, there's no more wishy-washy, because you have the information that you need to be like, we're doing it, or nope, doesn't align. We're not even messing with it. And it takes away so much ambiguity and gray around decision-making processes that you're not frustrated by some of this anymore.
Definitely. That is so true. That is just so true. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I agree 100%. And it gives, what I found too, is it gives your team less gray. Yes. Which has been such a winning thing for us.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that understanding why, right? When someone understands why and the purpose behind, a certain SOP or certain way of doing a process is, when they understand the why behind that, they're not going to question everything you're doing. I always think back to like when I was a kid, right? Like, why? Why, mom? Why? Right? Like you stand there and they're telling you to do something and you question every nuance. Why? Why do I have to do it this way? Why is it got to be like that? Why are we doing this? Right? Like when you're being annoying. Do you remember? I don't know if you ever did this as a kid. I know I did, because I was totally that kid. Why are we doing it this way? Why does it matter? Why do I have to? I don't want to. So why? Tell me why I should want to. When you've already established that, there's no need to go back and be like, we do it this way because it matters. Well, why does it matter? You've already told them why it matters and why the understanding of the process is this specific thing because of this outcome. And, my mom used to be like, do it because I said so. That was never good enough for me. Doing it because I said so was never good enough for me. And it's funny now, like I look back on my childhood, I'm like, oh, so much of what I do now makes sense because I didn't like that. I didn't do it because I said so. So when you can tell your team, when you can tell your clients, when you can tell your community the reason behind the why, you don't have to ever say because I said so.
Yeah. Wow. That's really good. Two things with that is kids today, that does not work. That because I said so, it does not work with my kids at all. And second point to that is I would also recommend family core values. We actually have them. We've actually established them in our family, but I got the idea from a gentleman who's like 80 years old and has like 8 kids. And He actually has their family core values like in the front of their house. And he was saying how they would make decisions. Actually, their kids would make decisions by looking at those core values. Like, are these our family core values? Do you feel like that aligns with our core values as a family? And so a lot of times they would come up with decisions on their own that, aligned with the values and would avoid things that did not align with the core values. So
yeah,
there you go.
I believe it. I 100% believe it, because I've gotten feedback too that understanding, especially for sole proprietors, which is most of who I work with right now. Like right now I'm working mostly with online service providers and coaches. So they don't have a team, but the team is coming. So they're building the foundation for that outsourcing and scaling that will happen eventually. But when they take the time to really get their core values inside of their business, a lot of times there's alignment and crossover between their personal core values and the way they want to run and operate their business. And because they've gone deep on the business side, it's kind of bleeds into their personal life a little bit, but it brings clarity into the personal life. And then they'll take the questions that I've asked them and they'll take it further and ask that around their family core values or their personal core values. I 100% agree that relationship or like family core values is key. It makes such a difference because again, you don't have to do well, maybe I don't want to, you know exactly what you want. So if it doesn't align, right? Red flag, bye. I'm out.
Exactly.
I'm dating right now. So it's a thing. So, like understanding what matters to me and the way I want to live my life and the core values on how I want to navigate on a day-to-day basis for who I am and who I want to be brings so much clarity in all of my relationships, family, friends, dating, meeting people, all of that. The red flags are so much redder. And I'm just like, no, I'm out. Bye.
Wow. That's good. That's good. So one of the reasons I love talking to entrepreneurs that provide services to other businesses is because not only are you helping businesses, but you also have a business. So let's talk about your business.
I do.
Yeah. So when you started your business, what problem were you trying to solve?
I have an interesting journey. I started as a blogger, and the problem I was solving as a blogger was I had too much time on my hands. So I needed something to do. I needed a hobby. So I started blogging, and blogging led into being a virtual assistant, which led into owning and operating a social media management company. And from doing social media management for all kinds of service providers, bloggers, online coaches, small businesses, I started having these conversations about why does this matter? And, as a business owner who was serving other businesses, I found myself like accidentally coaching. So one day I was like, you know what, we're just going to make this a thing. I'm now a coach. We're going to, I didn't want to lean into being a coach too much, but then I was like, I just one day was like, you know what, if this is what it's being labeled by society, I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to do it because I know I can make a difference. So it was kind of born out of this process of I did it for myself. Then I did it for a few other people. Then I did it as an agency owner on a grander scale. And in the process, I learned some things like core values make a huge, huge difference. So my friends have dubbed me the unofficial Clubhouse Queen of Core Values. And I'll lean into that. I'm okay with it. It's a title I can, I get a crown. I'm a Leo. So give me a crown. I'm all about it. But what I found is that like being able to have conversations that matter was something I absolutely loved. And it was something that I didn't get to do just as a social media manager. So I was like, you know what, making this pivot and adding this element to what I do and how I impact other entrepreneurs serves me. It's a big part of who I want to be.
Let me ask you, this actually isn't on my sheet, but you were talking about, being a social media manager and leaning into the coaching process and talking about core values. Did you find that you needed to lean into that information though, in order to be a good social media manager?
Yes, it was a huge game changer in going from just scheduling content for people and seeing what would stick to actually understanding and working with my clients on a grander scale that actually made an impact, that actually made a significant impact. Because again, I went from understanding the basics and the nuances of social media to understanding why they wanted certain types of content, to understanding why that core element, the understanding of what the bigger picture, the bigger purpose of who they were serving was. So it went from recipes and cute memes for my blogger clients to, oh, you want to release a cookbook. So we are going to focus on the impact that your cookbook would have and how it will make right? Like meal planning easier, prepping easier, whatever the greater purpose was. For coaching clients, when I understand, my clients who are coaches, when I understand the heart of the community that they're building, that it's, I have one client who is a photographer and teaches other photographers how to really capture small moments and like the nuances of a family shoot to actually make it more about the memories than a staged photo. So it's capturing like real life in action. She teaches them how to do that because she is so heart-centered around capturing the moments that matter. And so we've created an entire community around the moments that matter and capturing them in photography. Understanding that heart, that core element of what she's building made all of the difference in the language that I'm speaking on their behalf, in the type of content we're sharing on their behalf, just even in the photography that I would select or the graphics that I would create to match the words we're trying to say. All of it comes together and it creates a much grander, cohesive feel for not just the brand, but also the community. And they recognize when it's the community, like it stands out so much greater because there's cohesion that a lot of companies and brands and solopreneurs are just missing. And they don't realize that they're missing it. They're doing a great job. They're not doing anything wrong. They just haven't taken it to the next level yet.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like that would actually lead to more engagement.
Massive amounts of engagement.
Makes more sense. All right. So you've been in business now. You're helping other people. But what has been some of your biggest challenges as a business owner?
Doing it for myself. Like, quite frankly, right? Like I do these things for other people and I've learned along my own journey, but to actually sit down and implement for myself has been one of my biggest challenges, which is why I hired a coach. I had to hire a coach to ask me the questions that I would ask other people. I find for a lot of entrepreneurs, business people in general, it's really easy to miss the trees because you're looking at the forest, right? So we don't see the nuances and we don't always take the time, because time is precious, to back things up a little bit and do it for ourselves. When I took the time back in November, I had a little extra bandwidth in my life to go molecular, like I tell my clients, on my own core values. I was able to fire my copywriter, which sounds horrible. I really didn't fire her. I just took her from doing my copy for my own business and put her working on some client stuff. So she wasn't unemployed. She just got shifted. Gotcha. I didn't need someone to interpret what I was trying to say for myself anymore. I didn't need it because I had brought her on board to do content for me because I didn't know how to tell my own stories. I didn't know what to say to connect with my clients. And she was able to kind of take my words and I could recognize my own words. She's an amazing copywriter. I recognized my own words, but there was actually a purpose and a point to the story we were telling. When I went molecular on my own core values and did my own practice of breaking things down, I shifted her away from doing work for me because I knew how to tell my stories. I knew what the purpose was. I knew where the impact was created. I knew how this piece fed into this piece and impacted this piece over here, this overarching theme. And it was a game changer. I was like, cool, I'm saving myself money by doing my own work. Go figure.
You answered why for yourself. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So what's something you would tell your younger self before you started your business? If you could go back in time, what's something you tell yourself?
Oh, so many things. When it comes to the business side of things, though, I think I would probably just tell myself to take a break. Like, I don't have to hustle all the time. I spent a lot of the last decade building my business with a mindset that the more I do, the more success I'll have. False. So wrong. The absolute opposite of what's actual reality. Just because you're hustling, right? Hustle mode, cancel it. We're canceling the word hustle. It's not a thing anymore. It doesn't exist. Don't do it. You want to align. Hustle. I mean, I had a conversation on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago where it was like, hustle should have never been a word that the online entrepreneur space grabbed onto. Should not have been a thing. It should never have been a thing because of the connotations of where that word comes from and the understanding for a lot of people what hustle is. It's bad. We don't want that. We don't want hustle. We want flow. We want ease. We want light. We want airy. We want magic in our businesses. So I had this idea that the more I produced, the more valuable I was. Which kind of comes a little bit from my childhood trauma. That's a whole other podcast. But what I realized is when I am serving who I am as a person right?
Mm-hmm.
Human first, entrepreneur second. When I am honoring my humanness, the entrepreneur thing just flows and it's magic and it's easy and it goes perfectly. And the abundance is there and the revenue is there and the opportunities and the connections just happen. It's organic and beautiful. The more you try to force that square peg into that round hole, the more you muck things up. Just taking a step back and letting things flow. I wish I had understood that, not just 10 years ago, but 20 and even maybe 30 years ago. As a child, it could have made a real impact in my life if someone had said those words to me. But since nobody did, I had to learn the lesson the hard way. And I hope that whoever's listening to this can just hear my heart when I say, like, let things flow. Don't try to force it all the time, because the best opportunities that come to you are usually the ones you don't expect in the most inopportune ways, but they create the most magic.
Yeah, it is amazing how life works that way. It's amazing too how you think of things and they just, I don't want to say they just appear, but I don't know, I guess it's serendipitous,
Yeah. One of my mantras over the last year has been, what's meant for me is already mine. It's already for me. It's already mine. It's because it's meant for me, which means I don't have to worry about somebody else taking it. I don't have to force things into like fruition. I don't have to make things happen. It's already mine. I just have to keep moving forward to catch up to the things that are already mine. That's it. That's all I got to do.
And you don't have to compare yourself to others.
Nope.
Social media is not a big deal. You just do what you do on there and enjoy it.
Exactly. Tell your stories, communicate your core values, connect with your community. Consistency is a huge factor in that. But if you're consistently telling the right stories, you're consistently communicating your core values, and you're connecting with your community, you don't have to worry about anything else. Because one of the things that I discovered in multiple conversations with people about core values is it's a magnetic attraction. When you understand and you're talking about your core values in 1,000 different ways, but that's the heart and soul of what you're doing, it's magnetically pulling in the right people. But the beautiful thing about a magnetic alignment and using a magnetic premise for your core values is they also repel, right? Magnets attract and they repel. So when you are dialed into the heart and soul and mission of what you're doing in those core values, you're pulling the right people to you, but you're pushing the wrong people and the wrong opportunities away. But it doesn't feel like you're pushing it away, because you're pulling in so much good that the bad it can't get to you, because there's like that magnetic force field protecting you.
Wow. I like that. That's good. I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that, because you've brought up Clubhouse a few times, and I really feel like, I've had people on there say, oh, I got into this room and it was really negative. But I don't have that, because one, I don't feed into it. I have really met some wonderful people.
We connected on there. That's how we
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's been so good. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Repel the negative.
Yep.
Bring in the positive.
Yep.
Love
and
it.
Understanding those core values, right? Like that's the magnet, and you can wrap the magnet in whatever you want, whatever verbiage, whatever messaging, whatever pretty colors or whatever. But when that's the core of what you're doing, that magnet is still working inside of all of that messaging, inside of all that visual branding. That magnet doesn't lose power because you've put it inside of something. And sometimes it can actually be amplified depending on what the material is, not to go all weird and sciencey on you. But my brain does these visual analogy things, and it's going a million miles an hour right now. But you have those experiences, but you also set the expectation and create that vibration and that energy in the universe that what's meant for me is good and wholesome and amazing, and it comes to me, and everything else I don't have to worry about. It doesn't happen, because I'm very much like you. I haven't had a bad Clubhouse experience yet. I haven't been in a room that was like, ew, because I'm not attracted to the rooms that are probably going to make me go, ew. And also I pick up on that energy really quickly and I bounce. I don't wait around and stick around and see what's going to happen. I'm out. I don't have time to waste.
I'm the same way. I'm right there with you. And I am you have encouraged me to do something. I need to assess my core values. I have it for my businesses. I have it for my family.
Yep.
But I need to assess where mine are when it comes to what I'm doing right now in a personal branding
Yep.
arena with the podcast, with coaching or business strategy, all of that, what that looks like for me. What are my core values around that? So thank you for putting that out there because I actually have not done that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I need to do that.
It's such an amazing process. Like I always learn new things about myself every time I dial in a little deeper. So I was like, that is really important to me. That really does make a difference in how I want to live my life. I'm a big believer in that we are designing our businesses, especially as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and service providers. We should be designing a business that serves our life, not giving up our life to serve our business. And the first step in doing that is really understanding the core values inside the business we're creating and for ourselves. Because there's crossover quite often, and you'll probably discover this as you build out your core values for that piece of what you're doing, because it's going to align with the life you're building with your family and the business you're serving on the other side. There'll be some intersection there. But what happens is you get the clarity around what you want, and then you get to decide how you do it. And that's where the alignment and the ease and the flow really starts to happen.
Oh gosh, you have said so much. It's going to be really cool to go back and edit this and listen to it again. You have had some notable quotables in there. So Jennifer, I'm super excited and I'm so thankful for your time. How would someone reach you if they wanted to inquire about your services or find out more information about your company?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love these conversations. So thank you for having me on the podcast. But you would find me on Instagram at the Jennifer Jane with a Y, Jayne, or on Clubhouse. Jennifer Jane is the same space. I'm working on a website. It's not ready yet, but you can also email me at jennifer@thejenniferjane.com.
Perfect. Lots of ways to get in touch with you. I am so thankful for your time and for you sharing such valuable insights, Jennifer. Thank you so very much for being here.
It was great. Thank you for having me.
I want to thank Jennifer for taking the time to join me on the Stitch for Success podcast. I'm so thankful for her. The free resource to help you get your company's core values that Jennifer mentioned is in the show notes. Oh boy, and I'm so excited to share my takeaways with you all on the next episode. I don't know about you, but things that I know will help my business grow is so exciting to me. I also will share with you an update on our hiring and dealing with our store repairs after our flood. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This episode is brought to you by Zeus's Closet, where we're like a tattoo shop for your clothes. Using the promo code STITCHED will save you 20% on branded company gear. You can see the show notes for details. Again, thanks for tuning in. Please rate, subscribe, and share the podcast. For those of you who have left podcast reviews on Apple, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is greatly appreciated. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and there's now a business page on Facebook. So excited for the growth of my little baby here. Thanks for your continued support. Have a great one.